could find such a love at our age. Whoever thought we could dance on a
Welcome to Couples Therapy in 7 Words. I'm your co-host, Judy Alexander, and I'm here with my husband, Dr. Bruce Chalmer.
Hello, Judy. Hello, viewers and listeners. Judy, what is today's title?
Parent RX, How to Communicate with Your Child, an interview with Dr. David Marcus.
Indeed, we just finished that interview, and if you are interested in better communication with your kids, and also with each other.
Right, with each other.
Yeah,
particularly if you're going through a divorce or some type of rift or having a bad time.
Yeah, and he tells, among other things, just sticking out in my mind, we just finished the interview, a very moving story about his work with a 15-year-old girl that I just found very moving. And so, stay tuned for that. We have something exciting today for the first time in our run of podcasts, which is we're going to pause for an announcement that will come in it's a video we've already made. So you'll see a little commercial announcement for something that's very exciting on our website, and we'll see you right after that. Judy, let's tell the folks about a really exciting development. We have a new affiliate.
Ah, yes, our new affiliate.
And our affiliate is Osuga, and they are makers of fine products to enhance your intimate life. We are deliberately circumlocuting a little bit so that we don't get pitched off various social media sites for saying, what that's about. But you can do your own, what you're imagining is accurate.
We can say toys for adults, yes?
They are. Well, we'll find out if we can. Won't we? So anyway, the way you avail yourself of these products is you go to our link, our website, ctn7.com, ctn7, that's couples therapy in 7 words, right? So ctn7, that's the number 7.com. I want to make sure you get all that, folks, because that's how you'll get there. If you get to our website, you'll see there's an affiliate link there for Osuga. And if you do that, what do you suppose people get?
They get fine, wonderful products that will enhance their intimate life.
Well, they do, and moreover, they get 15% off.
Right. They get 15% off.
Yes, they get an incredible discount. You're also helping us out when you do that. If you're familiar with how affiliate links work, of course, that's partly supporting us as well. But you get a great discount and for wonderful products. And Judy, do you want to say anything about the products?
Well, I will say that I have enjoyed testing all the products.
Let's just leave it at that.
And leave it at that.
Yes. And we wouldn't, as you've pointed this out, we wouldn't endorse products that we didn't believe in.
That's right, that we ourselves would not use.
Exactly. So enjoy that. And now back to our show. We also would like you to take a look, of course, at our books. And I have a forthcoming book coming out very soon. It is called The Passion Paradox, When You Feel Miles Apart and Still Love Each Other. And so that is going to be coming out soon. And I'm telegraphing this as well. I am actively developing a workshop that is based on the ideas in this forthcoming book. And that's going to be, I think, a lot of fun. Current thought is it's going to be a 3-part workshop. You can take any or all, you can do them in 3 separate chunks. They're 2 hours each, I think is what I'm planning. And it will be a web workshop where you will be highly engaged and you will learn a lot of stuff. It's the stuff I tend to talk about with folks in the first session. So it's not a therapy session because it's a workshop. There'll be other participants there. But you'll learn a whole lot from those, and I will be saying more about those when it is closer to actually happening, which should be a couple of months from now, I think, probably in January 2026, though I'm not promising that, but that's my current plan.
Okay.
So on with our interview.
On with the interview.
And we'll see you on the other side.
Our guest today is Dr. David Marcus. Dr. Marcus is a clinical psychologist with a background in research, therapy, and community engagement. In his clinical work, he provides guidance to promote children's emotional well-being. He has also advised domestic relations judges and family lawyers on the impact of custody disputes on child development. His forthcoming book, Parent RX, Prescriptive Wisdom, Tips, and Strategies for Communication with Your Child, will further explore these topics, providing parents with additional resources for fostering their children's emotional growth. David, welcome to Couples Therapy in 7 Words.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Well, we're delighted to have you on. We always like to start off by asking our guests, how did you get into the work you do? Tell us something about your own journey.
Well, I actually began in research, medical research, and studying neuroendocrinology. And ironically, I was a psychology major, but I would avoid the clinical courses because I was more interested in research. And then it succeeded. I presented a paper in New York and all this, on the work that I had done. And but I realized I was tired of the lab.
Mhm.
I could have continued the work. And I decided, the grant was up and I got on unemployment and I volunteered at a state hospital for adolescents. This was in near Philadelphia. And I realized this was the kind of work I wanted to do. Then I became a counselor at a foundation in Philadelphia, the Devereux Foundation. I don't know if I can say that, but that's where I worked for a while.
Oh,
Say it.
you can say it. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. And then from there, I went to graduate school, University of Louisville. And from there, I realized, in Cincinnati, that the children here really needed an advocate with the courts. I was seeing a lot of high conflict divorce cases, all right, which is not easy, but it was, and I realized, you were dealing with, like narcissistic parents and stuff like that. And you had to say, okay, these kids need somebody in the court to say, wait a minute, you can't do this. And ironically, when I first started the work with the domestic relations courts here in Cincinnati, they would give me court orders, for these cases. Go see Dr. Marcus. But the court order would always say, Dr. Marcus will not testify in order to maintain the integrity of the therapy.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
And I had a meeting with the judges and magistrates after, and said, you got to take that out. You have to take it out because I'm dealing with people, if I can't testify, I can't help these children. Some of them are using their children as foils against their ex, as parent alienation syndrome, all these types of things. And I said, I have to be able to tell the court these things. And even more important, I had to have teeth with these clients and say, hey, you keep doing this, the court's going to know. You know what I mean? And so I did that work for 20, I've been in practice for 40 years. I'm semi-retired now. I did that work for most of that time, doing custody evaluations and advising and consulting with the courts on children. Uh, and it was rewarding work, but it was stressful work, you know. And I'm getting older. And I said, I've had enough of the stress of that. Let somebody else do it. But it's really hard work, very labor intensive. And
Mhm.
it's also a threat to your psychology license to do that kind of work because
Well, and
somebody's
then
not going to
you're
like you.
exposed. Exactly. Yeah, that is the kind of thing that people get either sued over or complaints to the licensing board or whatever because
Right.
they're
That's
pissed, right?
that's
You
that's
piss people
exactly
off
what
in
would
that work.
happen.
Yeah, yeah,
If you can't discredit the report, discredit the psychologist.
yeah, yeah,
Right.
So they complained to the State Board of Psychology, and then you had to defend yourself and
yeah.
all these types of things. Fortunately, I did them okay,
Hmm.
and my reputation with the court, they just sort of shut them down. You know what I mean? And
Hmm.
say, hey, no, we need Dr. Marcus's opinion. Give him anything he needs, this type of thing. So, I did that work for many years and began to counsel people in these situations on how to communicate because these families under stress, which was my specialization, they did not know how to communicate with each other. They did not know how to communicate with their children.
Yeah. Well, everybody's angry and,
Yeah.
everybody is pissed off at each other. So you start saying things that you'll probably regret later. And
Well,
unfortunately, it's the kids that are affected most by it.
well, you're absolutely right, Judy.
Yeah.
It's like the families would come in usually for the children. And after just doing this work for not very long, actually, I realized I cannot see children without seeing their parents.
Yeah.
And I don't mean every once in a while.
Hmm.
I like every other time. And the reason I did that is because I realized I am not the agent of change here. The
Yeah, the
parents are.
powers with the parents, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Hmm.
And so, you know, And sometimes the kids would be afraid for me to talk to their parents, for instance, if there was abuse going on or something like that. But after a while, once they got to trust me, how I got to know them, which is another part of the whole process, they'd actually, well, it was the basis of the therapy. When somebody feels truly heard and understood, it gives them the hope that things can be better.
Right.
And so these children are finally say, can you talk to my mom? Can you talk to my dad about the stuff we've been talking? So, I'd wait for that, you know. Now, in certain cases of truly, abuse, sometimes I didn't get there.
Yeah.
But then I could tell that it was abuse, you know.
Mm.
And I have a chapter in my book called The Therapy of Silence, because I had a 15-year-old girl who came into my office once and said, first thing she said to me, she was brought in by her dad. And dad said, can I join the therapy session? I took one look at this girl's face and I said, no. But she looked like, like this. So she came into the office and she said, if you talk to my dad, I'm out of here. Now, it doesn't take a brilliant psychologist to realize this girl is being abused by her dad.
Yeah.
So I backed my chair up as far as I could in my office, because here she was with a male in private office here. And she sat there for 5 sessions and didn't say anything, but I could see she was working, And I would just say, I'm here. See that you're thinking. Maybe you want to, share your thoughts. That's fine. This was finally in the 5th session. It was kind of uncomfortable, but she needed what I call my soothing presence. This is a term I will describe to you. But finally, after that 5th session, she went over to my dollhouse. And she's 15, She took a male doll and a female doll, put them on the table, put the male doll on top of the female doll. And I said, I get it. And she was out of that house in 2 hours. I called Children's Services, says she's out. Sometimes you got to throw your title at people. You know what I mean? I said, this is Dr. Marcus. She's out. She came in to see me the next time. She was now out of the house. I think she was living with an aunt. She handed me this envelope. It's an old, crusty envelope. It was crusted with dried blood, and in it were razor blades. She gave them to me, and she said, Dr. Marcus, I don't need these anymore.
Oh, my.
Wow.
This is the kind of work that I was doing. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
These kids were really being hurt
Mm-hmm.
by the parents. The double binds, that you tell your mom this, tell your dad that, all these things. And one of the things I discovered is there's a big difference between young children's reaction to this type of situation and tweens and teenagers. I mean, you want to interrupt me, and you want to, is there something you want to, I can go on and talk about how to create the communication between children and parents.
Yeah, actually, we were going to ask you about that very thing. The concept. I think you used the term emotional language, which can mean a lot of different things. How do you use that term, and how do you apply that?
Sure, I didn't want to go on and on.
No, that's great.
There's all these anecdotes I could tell you, but I don't think that's the purpose.
Yeah.
Okay. One of the things I dealt with hundreds of children is I realized that parents are making a big assumption about their children and how they communicate. And that was that the words that the children were using had the same meaning the parents.
Yeah.
And, so I came up with the term a common emotional language. And what I mean by that is having the parents learn how the children would describe their emotions, and using those terms rather than their own. Because what parents' assumption is, oh, I went through it too, and they go into this litany about this is what you should do, and this is what I went through, and you're cutting off the process. And the process is the one which I call emptying out, which is actually different than catharsis. Okay.
Yeah, what do you mean by emptying out?
Okay. Emptying out, of course, involves mirroring, but it also involves, on the parents' part, but it also involves being what I mentioned earlier, a soothing presence.
Mhm.
Okay. Now, I don't just mean a soothing person, you know, a soothing presence envelops the entire environment that's going on in the household. Okay. Parents have a difficult time soothing their children if they're all uptight themselves.
Oh, I was going to say, yeah, that's the problem they're having when they're in freak out mode themselves. It's very difficult or
Exactly.
nearly impossible for them to be that sort of soothing presence for their kids. Yeah.
Exactly. And, you know, things can impinge upon a family from the outside, job stress, money stress, whatever it might be. Kids are a stress. You know what I mean? These are things that take away a person's capacity to be soothing. All right. Now, what is soothing? All right. I have to explain what happens when a person is filled up so I can explain about emptying out.
Mm,
Okay. This is how I explain it, and I appreciate any feedback that you have for me.
sure.
Um, we all have an emotional space within us. It's not a real space, it's a psychological space, and we typically point to our heart when we think about our emotions, but obviously it's associations in our head. And this space can get filled up, and what fills it up is intense emotion,
Mhm.
anxiety, fear, frustration, anger, And we know when this space is filled up. We have words to describe it. I've had it up to here.
Mm-hmm.
The straw that broke the camel's back.
Mhm.
The point I'm trying to make is that we know when we're feeling this intensity and it's uncomfortable, makes us feel like we're not in control of our emotions sometimes. Like, am I normal? All this kind of thing goes on. So we focus inwardly on how we're feeling and do something about it. We may journal. We may get it off our chest with somebody. We may go for a run or
Mm.
distract ourselves. You don't go and kick the dog if you're angry, but you get the point. It's just like,
Yeah.
so, but hopefully not. So the point is that we're focused inwardly to deal with our own stuff.
Yeah.
So by definition, we're not focused outwardly, which means somebody can be talking to us in the most logical, explanatory way about why we shouldn't feel the way we do, and we don't hear it.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, also, I mean, just sort of, this isn't even metaphorical. If they do functional MRI scans, when people exceed a certain level of anxiety or emotional
Uh-huh.
arousal, whole chunks of neocortex are shut down so that they can't hear, they can't understand, they can't think. They're basically
Yeah.
just in that space of being totally filled up emotionally. And so,
I'm just putting another term to it.
yeah,
Mhm.
You're
yeah, yeah.
you're right. You know,
Mm.
and I mean the example I typically give is what's called a blinding rage. You ever hear the
Mhm.
term a blinding
Oh,
rage?
sure. Yeah.
That's an accurate term. When
There
somebody
is
is
an
that
element of
filled up with
literal. Yeah.
anger,
Hmm.
Mhm.
they are pretty much blind. They hear that 5% of what you said or the tone of your voice that somehow supports their rage, and they
Mhm.
Hmm.
get angrier. And then finally, that person who's trying to be calm and logical says, I can't talk to you. And
Hmm.
that's
Right.
the beginning of the walls building up between couples.
Yeah.
Now, the implication of what I'm saying is in order for somebody to get to hear you, you've got to empty them out because they're all filled up. They're not ready to hear it. This is true with children too. You're not going to talk logically to a child throwing a temper tantrum. I mean, it's
Right.
not going to go anywhere. So um, the thing that I've really discovered, I don't know if I really, I have my own terms, so I'll just put it that way. Emptying out is not just catharsis because you have to empty out people on three levels in order to really empty them out. The most the most superficial level is what I call the here and now. And I use a silly example. You need to take out the garbage. Well, we have lots of words to describe why we need to take out the garbage. It's smelly, it's your job, whatever. Okay, that we understand. But the next deeper level is the history level.
Mm.
This is the sixth time I've asked you to take out the garbage when you haven't done it. Now, obviously the reaction is going to be stronger. But if you didn't know the history, if you were just staying on the logical here and now level,
Hmm.
you go, what's the big deal? So they didn't take out the garbage.
Mhm. Right.
The deepest level is what I call the tapped into level. Again, these are my terms. They're in the book, but the point is still
Right.
the fact that you didn't take out the garbage after I asked you 6 times means you don't listen to me.
Yeah.
I hate when people don't listen to me.
It's
My
the bigger
brother didn't
narrative.
listen
Yeah.
to me. And where things break down is everybody tries to stay on level one and argue logically about this.
Yeah.
But most of the intensity is coming from the history level and the tapped into level.
Mm-hmm.
And
There's a metaphor. I'll just
go
to
ahead.
throw it by way
Oh,
of
please.
comparison. The metaphor is one of my favorites. I've just written about actually the emotional bank account metaphor. It's a very similar
Yeah.
concept that when you have a nice balance, a nice positive balance in the emotional bank account, then when one of these challenges happens, when hey, would you take out the garbage? It could be annoying that someone is asking or annoying that someone didn't do it, but it stays at the level of annoyance. It's like, ah, that's annoying, but we just kind of accept that, yes, we're all annoying occasionally and it's no big deal.
Mm-hmm.
What you're calling the tapped in level, I think, relates very nicely to my emotional bank account metaphor. It's like, yeah,
Mm-hmm.
the trouble is when you're overdrawn, then as soon as you have an experience that is a withdrawal, you're already overdrawn, so it gets worse. It's like your tapped in level. It's like, yeah, all that's what couples will describe when they're saying, how come every time we talk about something trivial and get into a disagreement, every disagreement we've had for the last 6 months comes or the last 16 years comes up.
Mm-hmm.
And it happens because they have never had the experience of
Tapped into.
actually feeling okay about resolving that stuff.
Yeah.
So it immediately is salient. And that's
Yeah.
again fits in, I think, with what you're
Yeah. The
describing.
tapped into level floats up into the history level
Yeah,
in the
yeah,
terms of, uh-oh, here we go again. And
yes,
Right.
they're immediately filled
yes.
up.
Mm-hmm.
And now everybody's talking and nobody's listening
Yeah.
because they're
Mm-hmm.
all filled up. See,
Here
you
we go
know,
again is such a
Here's
great,
the argument.
it's such an indicator of, okay, you have an ongoing, you have tapped in issues. Yes, that's what here we go again is all about. It's like, okay, you really haven't been able to connect on that, have you? And so it keeps coming up.
well, where it's really helped me in my work with couples,
Mhm.
obviously for dealing with families with children who are having symptoms, it's the couples who are having symptoms too. Um, is when I talk to them about internalization and regression.
Mhm.
One of the things that internalization, that the way I'm using it is it's almost like subliminal learning. Okay, you take in things on an unspoken level as children, you know, and they're in there. And one of those things, well, actually, one of the things, if you want to get sociological, is prejudice.
Mhm.
Okay, it's not like somebody sits you down when you're 17 years old and say you're going to hate these people or those people, right? Because at 17, you've had your own experiences with these people and say, why would I do that?
If I could
Right?
quote Rogers and Hammerstein, it has to be carefully taught. That's from South Pacific.
Well, you know,
I won't break into song now.
children see the tension. Children are exquisitely aware of how their parents feel. They hear
Mm-hmm.
the comments, and it gets in there. And one of the things that gets in there is how to react to stress. Okay. So when we get stressed, and kids are great at giving us unanticipated stress, you know what I mean? That's the worst kind. We fall back to these internalized responses.
Mhm.
Okay. And but we're not aware of it because it's never really been spoken. It's this.
Yeah.
And so what's the natural thing to do? Blame the other person for how you feel.
Right.
That
You say,
maps actually, I think, nicely onto attachment theory. And I'm not particularly an attachment theory maven, but I
mm-hmm,
appreciate it. I appreciate a lot of the
mm-hmm.
insights of attachment theory and that concept that, yeah, we have our characteristic ways of dealing with stress and how a couple interacts can inadvertently they can trigger each other's panic modes. And that has a lot to do with attachment style, according to the attachment
Well,
theorists.
yeah.
Yeah.
Again, yeah, actually, there's nothing new under the sun. The terms that we are using are simply ways of explaining things that I'll segue here for a second. I had a course in graduate school called History of Psychology.
Hmm.
And it was a throwaway course, 1 credit, you had to get a 95 to get an A. It was one of the most fascinating courses I ever took because he
Hmm.
didn't start with Wundt and Adler and all that. He
Hmm.
started with the Greeks.
Hmm.
and the Greeks brought up these questions that we're still trying to answer.
Yeah.
What is mental illness? What is therapy? What is cure?
Mm-hmm.
And we've been going around with these with different bandwagons for 100 years, and
Oh, yeah.
and we're still asking those questions,
Mm-hmm.
And what I've found, like probably you have found too, is that there's a certain humility to the work that we do because we never really know.
Mm-hmm.
Every case is different.
Yeah.
When I've sat down with couples and they vent and they tell me what's going on, I get into, okay, tell me about your own histories. All right. Tell me about your relationship with your parents. How did they react to stress? Things like that. Right. And then I point out to them about internalization and regression. And they realize that, gee, when we argue, it's 10% of what the argument's about and 90% about what's being tapped into, which predates my marriage by 30 years. You know what I
Yeah.
mean?
Yeah.
And that is really helpful. They begin, oh, now I understand why he reacts this way.
Mm-hmm.
I need to get the answers right away and he needs to think about it. Well,
And
that's how
you
easy.
just described one of my favorite things. Do you know what I'm referring to? Well, I won't put you on the spot, but what I call it is the oh shit moment. It's like, oh shit, that's
I've
what's
heard that
going
one
on.
before.
Yes, the oh shit moment. It's like, oh shit, that's what's happening. I don't call it an aha moment because it doesn't immediately solve it, but it takes the sting out. It's like, oh, you're not crazy and I'm not crazy. No wonder we're driving each other nuts here. It's because, of the
Yeah,
stuff you're talking about. It's like, oh, all right, well, now I can look at it without panic, which of course, that's about 90% of the way to being able to solve something. If you have your brain
yeah,
back, maybe you can think, maybe you can hear each other, all of that
yeah.
from
You're right.
that sort of insight. Yeah.
Yeah, you're
Yeah.
correct. And when this becomes a topic of conversation with the couple, and they begin to come to exactly what you said, realizations about, he's not such a bad guy. It's just that he does
Mhm.
it different.
Yeah,
And
Mhm.
it's not his
exactly.
fault that he does it different. He's got this inside him, and that's where he goes. And this is where I go. Now, what
And
can we
some
do
of
about
that,
it? Mm-hmm.
I love to point out often, and it's not always true, but some of that is what attracted themselves to each other.
Yes,
That's
I
it's
know
the
that's
same
right. I know
stuff.
that's
It's
funny.
the same stuff that is attractive becomes annoying too in different aspects. And that's the human condition as well. I love to point out to couples, the reason sexual reproduction is an advantage for a species is because it creates diversity. It creates, it makes the species more resilient. And so when we've evolved to seek someone who's quite different from us. And
Yeah,
that's going to be the same stuff
opposites
that annoys the hell
attract,
out of
that
me.
kind of thing.
Yes. Well, yeah, I mean, not complete opposites, but just
Well,
those
you're right. You're right.
differences are inevitable. And they're also going to be annoying. We are all going, and I always like, I always like to say
I
this.
do know
We,
that.
I, the capacity to tolerate annoyance is the key skill for all relationships. And Judy needs that capacity much more than I do because I'm way more annoying.
I was going to say the same thing about my wife, Susan.
Yes. Yes.
I,
And I say to guys, we should pretty much recognize that. It's like, no, we're more annoying.
uh,
Deal with that. And then then we can understand our wives being annoyed with us. And Judy's so nice about how she's annoyed with me. That's why we get along well. So she's really very nice
no,
about
no, my wife just walked in the room giving me a dirty look.
it. I mean, you can invite her in if
Actually,
you want.
uh,
If you want to get a second opinion here.
no, I say this and she hates when I say it, but I'll say, I think wives have an extra lobe in their brain that remembers every stupid thing that their husbands do.
Oh yeah, yeah.
It's amazing to me. She can
Well,
bring
I,
up
I
things.
have a physiological theory about that, which is probably nonsense, but I
No,
will say it
it's
anyway.
right.
No, well, I think this statement is true, although I haven't tried to look it up much in case I've been wrong all these years. I think women have 25% more fibers in the corpus callosum than men do. And so women,
Okay.
and now I'm about to do a leap that probably an actual neuroscientist would say, nah, but I'm going to say it anyway. Seems to me that would at least explain or correlate with why y'all women
Mhm.
are so much better at emotional language than men are. Women are often mystified that men cannot know how we feel. Do you know that one?
Yes, I do know that one.
Yes.
Yes, there are many examples of
Yes. It's like it's astonishing. It's like because a guy will say, I'm literally, the woman will say, I think you're angry. And the guy will say, I don't know. But he's obviously angry. But he literally, and the women can't believe that he doesn't know it. He literally doesn't know. At least he doesn't know it consciously. Or he doesn't want to admit it. But
Or is
yeah,
oblivious to certain emotional things.
yes,
Yeah.
Well,
exactly. We just don't know about it in ways that women tend to. That third lobe you're describing, I think, is pretty much that.
yeah.
Because they're going to pick up on the
You know,
emotional stuff.
So let's bring this back around a little bit to
Go
getting
ahead.
back to the family. So, can you tell us what are some common parenting mistakes that get in the way of emotional communication?
Okay. Um, there's some obvious ones. Getting defensive.
Mm-hmm.
That keeps things on there. That logical level. Um, I've seen families of attorneys. Why am I seeing families of attorneys? Give me 3 examples of why you feel the way you do.
Yeah,
Well,
exactly.
you can't, you shouldn't feel that way.
Yeah.
I do, that type of thing. So getting defensive, obviously trying to, with children, trying just to redirect them or make them laugh. Okay. I mentioned one earlier. Oh, yeah, I went through that too. And you go into a litany about what you went through.
Mm-hmm.
These are all ways of stopping the child from being able to empty out. Now, there's a precondition to this. I'm glad you brought it up, Judy, because an emotional language is not something you're born with. I see a lot of parents come in and say, oh, my child's really bright. They have a great vocabulary. Say, well, that's not an emotional language.
Mm-hmm.
Okay?
Right.
How does an emotional language develop? Through use, through parents being able to help the child move from just behaviors like tantrums to using their words. How many times you said, not parent, use your words, I was seeing 2 brothers, and I was just talking to mom a little bit in my office, and the 2 brothers in my waiting room. And all of a sudden we hear this scream. So we both go running out. And the 9-year-old's holding his arm crying, and the 7-year-old's looking like, oh, I'm in trouble now. So I'm the psychologist, so I'm observing, and mom says, what happened? He bit me. And the kid picks up his shirt, and there's teeth marks on his arm. He really bit him. Here's the poor mother. Here she is in the psychologist's office, and her kids are fighting one another. She's mortified. And she turns to the 7-year-old and says, I told you to use your words. He looks at her in all innocence and says, I don't know how.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I said, Mom, that's where we need to go.
Mm-hmm.
How do you do that? Yeah. Well, you should begin with young children, and there's typical play therapy things where you have the faces and everything, and have the child name it. I came up with a couple of games that help children come up with their language. Okay. One of the games is called Madball, right? And I'll share it with you. I got a softball. Went to Toys R Us back then and got a softball. I had a blank wall in my office. And, little boys more so, but little girls do too. They like to show you how tough they are, how strong they are. These are 5 years old, 6-year-old, 7-year-old. So I said, take the ball, tell me something that really makes you mad, and then throw the ball into the wall as hard as you can. When my mom makes me eat my peas, wham! Whoa, that was really cool, He smiles from ear to ear. And then I've already talked to the parents, and I know some of the things that make them angry. Oh, what makes me angry? Because I'm doing it too. When I used to get angry when my dad would just make me go to my room when I didn't do anything. Wham! The kid go, yeah, me too. Wham! How mad does it make you? And I got some great ones. Okay. With little kids, I went, this man, this man, this man, because they don't know scales yet. These kids can touch their hand behind their back. If I did that, I'd break my scapula, But, and what word we use? One of them said, the planet mad. The best one I got was volcano mad. I thought that one was great.
I can imagine one of our grandsons
Okay.
about that.
And with this boy, I said, okay, that makes you mad, really mad. What makes you less mad? Oh, my mom makes me eat my peas. From then on, okay, did that make you volcano mad or eat your peas? He grinned from ear to ear because this is his language. The parents need to come up with a common language that's based on the child's experience and how they explain things. And we don't do that very much, and that cuts things off. This one's really going to shock you, I think. I wish, as a person who deals with children and families, I'd love to get rid of the phrase "make feel better."
Oh yeah. No, I can see that.
Feel
Yeah.
better.
Yeah.
It never works.
I never ask people, how does that make you feel in a session?
No, you're very good. Me too.
Never
I'm
ask
ahead
that
of you.
question.
Something makes it hard. Something
Yeah.
makes it tough, but never. And how does that make you feel? I tell parents don't do that too, David, just because one of them says, "You sound just like Dr. Marcus." I mean, this type of thing. But you're right. Coming up with this language is really important, and make feel better. I was saying, because you're already aware of this. It doesn't work. I mean, if you have something heavy on your heart and you go to somebody and you begin to explain it to them, and all of a sudden they break in on you and say, "Oh, I know exactly how you feel, and this is how I did," and go into their own little talk about it. If it was a really good friend, he'd say, "Just hear me out."
Mm-hmm.
Because
Yeah, trying to talk someone out of a bad feeling does not talk them out of the bad feeling.
No, because you're still on that level. You're still on that logical level.
Yeah, it leaves them unconnected.
So if it wasn't such a good friend, you'd say thank you and go find a good friend. Now, if we think about the people we turn to when we're really upset, they're always a soothing presence, which means they are okay and listening when we're not okay. Family members, certain friends, unless you wear your heart on your sleeve, there's only a few people we turn to with stuff like that. And that's why,
Yeah.
But the difference is children. A child of 5 or 6 or 7 is not going to turn to their dad or mom and say, "Will you shut up and listen to me?"
Yeah, exactly.
They're going to sit there and go,
I was thinking, when you're describing meanball, I was thinking how
Madball. Get it right.
Madball means different. Yeah, Madball. When you were describing that, I was thinking what an effect that would have on the parent. And I'm just imagining, teaching a kid that, and it's going to help the parent learn that same skill. Because a lot of times parents don't, I hadn't thought of this before, but a lot of what I'm working with a couple in a session has to do with putting that in context. It's like, no, you don't have to be volcano mad about this. You can just be eat your peas mad about this, in whatever language the parent would be using. But for people to discover that there are degrees, again, corollary to that notion of, you can tolerate moderate annoyance and not have to, think it's the end of the world. That's a huge relationship skill. And I'm just imagining a parent teaching that to their child would be learning from it at the same time.
That's being a soothing presence.
Yeah.
You see, you could internalize aggression from your parents as a reaction to stress, right? Or fear or avoidance. I mean, these are all things that, we just take in. We can also take in a soothing presence.
So
it's a
tell
wonderful
our
legacy.
Indeed, yeah. Tell our listeners how they can get in touch with you or how they can find your book when it comes out.
Well, the book is still, when it comes out, I'll let you know, and we can talk about the book proposal's in, and we're waiting to hear from publishers. They can get in touch with me. My email is dsmarcusphd at parentrx, one word, parentrx.org. And that's my website, parentrx.org. And I've got a number of podcasts, as this one, on that site, talking about similar things or, little different things. I consult with people about these things. I teach these types of things. I mean, the reason I wrote the book is because, the parents I was seeing would come in and take notes and say, "Dr. Marcus, you got to write this stuff down because it's really helping us," which is very edifying.
Yes,
but
indeed.
But it's just me, you know what I mean? And so I have people waiting for the book, you know what I mean? But
now you have a bunch more people waiting for the book.
Well, I hope
hear about it on this.
There's more to. I've given you the basic structure of this, how to actually, the how-tos of developing the emotional language and making it safe for a child to be able to talk to you. That's a skill. That's part of being a soothing presence. And I often have to talk to parents about changing lifestyle because they've got so much stuff going on that they're always putting out a fire. They're not responding, they're reacting. And how they're reacting is based on what they've internalized. So I actually teach parents this stuff, showing them this doesn't make logical sense, but emotionally it makes sense.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You know, and they take it in and they try and they use I give them phrases to use like not how do you make it feel. And I always warn them about that one. You're right. But something makes it hard. Something makes it up. I use the word something because it generalizes it. It's not like you're doing something wrong, because then they're going to get defensive. And I use the word tough and let them define the word tough. We know it's tough, scary, tough, frustrating, tough, angry. And then give me a word to describe the anger or the frustration, around the world, frustrated, and, I've gotten some great ones, and I'll use them. And I teach parents to use these phrases with their children because the children will light up. They really get it.
Yeah.
And they're really listening because they're using those words, they get me. And that is so important.
We will put your website on the notes for this episode. Thank you so much for doing this.
Oh, my pleasure. Thanks for having me. It's been a delight, One thing I'll mention, I say this to my Jewish, parents, to the fathers, I say, your job is to be a mensch.
Mm-hmm. I have that very word actually in a couple of my books.
And
in my forthcoming book.
Jewish listener, Google it.
Yeah, Google Mensch. It's a good thing. It's something you want to be, and you want your children to be that too. Thanks a lot.
Right.
Many
Okay.
thanks.
Okay.
Welcome back. We hope you enjoyed that interview with Dr. David Marcus.
Indeed.
I know we did.
We did, and learned a lot from that. So I hope you will. I hope you learned a lot from that as well. Let me put in a word now from our affiliate sponsor. Hey folks, before we go, just another reminder, visit our affiliate link on our website. It's for the company Osuga, who are makers of fine products to enhance your intimate life.
And don't forget, you'll get a 15% off everything on their site.
And the way you get there is go to our website, ctin7.com, click on the affiliate link. Bingo, you will be shopping with couples therapy in 7 words, and you'll get 15% off everything site-wide. And we highly recommend it. We're back. Judy, any final stuff we should tell our listeners before we say goodbye for today?
Just the usual. Follow us, tell your friends about us, like us on social media, and do all those things. Buy our books. And if you have a question that you would like us to talk about on the air, or if you have a suggestion for a guest, or if you yourself would like to be a guest on our podcast, you can go to our website, ctin7, that's CTIN, the numeral 7.com, and you can find all that wonderful stuff there. How to contact us, how to be on our podcast, and how to order stuff from our affiliate.
Yeah, absolutely. And so until next time,
remember, be kind,
don't panic,
and have faith.